The library at St. Clair's University was unusually quiet for a Friday evening. Outside, the campus buzzed with the sounds of students eager to start their weekends, music blaring from dorm windows, laughter echoing from groups heading to late-night parties. But here, deep in the maze of bookshelves and dim lighting, Aria Kapoor sat at her usual table, her pen poised over a notebook filled with messy equations and half-finished thoughts. She brushed a strand of her jet-black hair behind her ear, her focus flickering to the window. The soft glow of the streetlights illuminated her delicate features, large, almond-shaped eyes, high cheekbones, and lips that always seemed on the verge of a smile. Aria was the kind of girl people noticed, not just because she was beautiful, but because she carried herself with an effortless charm that drew people in. But tonight, her thoughts weren't on her research, nor on the project deadline looming over her. Instead, her mind was tangled in a web of emotions she couldn't untangle. Two names circled in her thoughts like a mantra: Kian and Dev. It had all started 6 months ago when she joined her postgraduate program in astrophysics. Aria had always been passionate about the stars, about the vast mysteries of the universe that seemed to mirror the chaos inside her own heart. On the first day of class, she had walked into the lecture hall, ready to immerse herself in equations and theories. What she hadn't expected was to meet two men who would change everything. Kian Patel had been the first to catch her attention. He was tall and confident, with dark, wavy hair that seemed to defy gravity and a smile that could disarm anyone. Kian was the type of person who lit up a room without trying, charismatic, quick-witted, and always the centre of attention. He had an easy way about him, like the world had been made for him to conquer. "Need a partner for the lab project?" he had asked her that day, sliding into the seat next to hers before she could say no. She had hesitated, unsure of his intentions, but something about his warm smile and the way he carried himself made her nod. Sure. Working with Kian had been both exhilarating and maddening. He was brilliant, no doubt, but he had a way of pushing her buttons, teasing her until she rolled her eyes and muttered insults under her breath. But there was a spark between them, an undeniable chemistry that made her heart race every time he looked at her just a little too long, his teasing smile softening into something deeper. And then there was Dev Sharma. She had met Dev in the library, the very same table where she now sat. Unlike Kian, Dev was quiet, almost painfully so. He had an intensity about him, the kind that made people keep their distance. But not Aria. She had always been drawn to the quiet ones, to the people who carried storms inside them, but never let anyone see. Dev had been hunched over a book, his thick-rimmed glasses slipping down his nose, when she had accidentally dropped her notebook on the floor. He had picked it up without a word, his fingers brushing hers as he handed it back. "Thanks," she had said, flashing him a smile. He had nodded, his dark eyes flicking to hers for the briefest of moments before returning to his book. It had taken weeks of careful conversations and stolen moments for her to crack his shell. But once she had, Aria discovered a side of Dev that no one else seemed to see. He was brilliant, yes, but also kind, with a dry sense of humour that could catch her off guard. Where Kian was bold and fiery, Dev was steady and calm, a quiet force that anchored her when everything else felt like chaos. For months, Aria had tried to keep her feelings for both of them at bay. She told herself it wasn't real, that it was just the stress of her program playing tricks on her heart. But it was impossible to ignore the way her stomach flipped whenever Khan leaned in too close during a lab session, his voice low and teasing as he whispered some inside joke meant just for her. It was just as impossible to ignore the way her chest tightened whenever Dev opened up to her, sharing pieces of himself he didn't share with anyone else, his dreams of becoming a researcher, his fears of not being good enough, the quiet vulnerability in his voice that made her want to reach out and hold him. And now, as she sat in the library, the weight of her feelings pressing down on her, she knew she couldn't avoid the truth any longer. She was in love with both of them. The first confrontation came with Kian. They were in the physics lab, alone except for the hum of the machines around them. Kian had been unusually quiet, his usual teasing demeanour replaced by something more serious. "Aria," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. She looked up, startled by the way he was staring at her, intense, focused, as though she were the only thing in the universe that mattered. "I can't do this anymore," he said, running a hand through his hair. Her heart skipped a beat. "Do what?" "This," he said, gesturing between them, "pretending like I don't feel the way I do about you." She opened her mouth to respond, but he held up a hand. "Just let me say this, okay?" he said, his voice softening. "I like you, Aria. I've liked you since the first day I saw you, and I know I can be an ass sometimes, but I can't help it. You make me crazy in the best way." Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to say something, anything, but her mind was spinning. Later that night, as she sat alone in her room, her phone buzzed with a message from Dev. "Can we talk?" They met at the coffee shop near campus, a quiet place where they had spent countless hours studying together. Dev was already there when she arrived, his hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "You okay?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from him. He looked at her, his dark eyes filled with something she couldn't quite place. "I need to tell you something." Her heart sank. She already knew what he was going to say. "I like you, Aria," he said, his voice steady but soft. "I don't know if you feel the same way, but I had to tell you. I couldn't keep it to myself anymore." Her chest tightened, the weight of the situation crashing down on her. Two incredible men, both of whom she cared about deeply, both of whom had opened their hearts to her. In the days that followed, Aria found herself caught in the impossible maze of her emotions. Kian with his fiery passion and magnetic charm, Dev with his quiet strength and unwavering loyalty. They were two halves of a whole, each offering her something the other couldn't. But she knew she couldn't have both. She had to make a choice. And as she stood beneath the stars one night, her heart aching with the weight of her decision, she realized that love wasn't about choosing the person who made your heart race the fastest. It was about choosing the person who made you feel like you were home. Now, all she had to do was figure out which of them that was.